Hey there, and welcome to this Motion Science podcast. I'm Cameron, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about freelancing. And in particular, we're going to talk about the three key points that you need to focus on right now to become a successful freelancer. Hey there, and welcome to the podcast. As I said, I'm Cameron, and you already know that. And we're talking about the three key points today to focus on to become a successful freelancer. I get asked all the time, what should I be focused on? Should I be focused on the software? Should I be focused on my reel? Should I be focused on, getting the work? What should I focus on? Well, there's several things you could focus on, but for me, there's three main key points that are very, very important for you to focus on so that you do become successful as a freelancer. And I'm telling you this from experience. I started freelancing back in 2007. I did it remotely for the most part. Sometimes I would travel to production studios on location, but I tried to stay remote for the most part. And I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work in freelancing. So let's talk about the first thing. The first thing is you need to get very, very clear. You need to get super clear on what type of freelancer you want to be. Okay. That can be it can be numerous things depending on what you want to do. So there's things like there's freelance generalists, there's freelance specialists, there's remote artists like myself, there's on location artists. Depending on where you live, that might be something that's, something you're able to do. So those are kind of like some typical, like generalized terms for what you could be as a freelancer, right? So the first one is a generalist. So a generalist is pretty much like what I did. Okay. A generalist can do many things well. Now, you don't want to be a generalist and know how to do, let's say design and motion and compositing and visual effects, but not do it very well. So if you're a generalist, you need to be very well rounded, right? You can't be strictly an animator. Well, you can be strictly an animator and be a generalist. And maybe that's something like, character animation and you're really good at logo animation, or you're really good at particle animation. Maybe that's the type of generalist you are. Or like I said, maybe you're a generalist like me and you can design style frames. You can animate. You can animate style frames, right? Like you can design the style frames and then you can come back and you can actually animate those style frames. Or you're really good at animating and designing. Maybe you can also do a really good overall polish. Maybe you're good working with typography. So there's lots of different kind of subcategories for being a generalist. But then there's also being a specialist. And a specialist is just as powerful as being a generalist. Specialist could be like you're only focused in on animating cameras. Maybe you only animate 3D cameras, or maybe you only do character animation, or maybe you only do vector-based style frames. Maybe you only work on particle effects and Houdini, or another 3D package, or maybe you're a 3D modeler. So that's a specialist. That's someone who really focuses on one particular area and they're really, really good at that particular area and they get hired for that one talent. Now, in my own personal experience, I did work for studios and to me, they were looking more for generalists. Depending on what the project was, there was times where we'd bring in specialists or they'd bring in specialists, but there was a lot of generalists working with us. Then there's also like you can be a remote artist. So a remote artist means that you're working from your own home studio in your own city and you work remotely through the internet and you work with producers or teams and you do, your piece of the project. A lot of times remote specialist or generalist, you get, a small piece of a project and there's a big team and maybe you're just filling a gap for a team. That team could be on location in a studio in a city and you're just, filling in the gaps. You can also be an on location freelancer, which means that, if you do live in a large city, like I live in America, and in America, there's a lot of work to be found in Los Angeles. There's a lot of work to be found in New York, Seattle, larger cities like that. I'm in a smaller city in Florida, and I couldn't get the type of work I want to do here on location. Before this, I lived in Kansas City, and Kansas City was very challenging to get on location work because there's a lot of regional work, but I wanted higher end work and I wanted international work, and that was on the coasts. So that's why I had to be a remote specialist because I didn't want to travel. I had kids. When I started, I had small kids, and I chose to be close to them. So if you live in a larger city and you have opportunities to work for different studios or agencies, that's a great fit as well. Something else I want to talk about just really briefly is when you're deciding what type of freelancer you want to be, generalist, specialist, remote, on location, you don't need to know all the softwares. So a lot of freelancers or people who are thinking about going freelance get caught up in the idea that they have to learn After Effects and Cinema 4D and Houdini and all the different plugins and things like that. You don't need to know all of that. Just focus in on what it is that you do need to know to be really good at whatever type of freelancer you are. So, for me, again, I'll go back to me as a generalist. I needed to know After Effects really well, and I needed to know Photoshop and Illustrator. And that was for design purposes. Now, I did move into designing more inside of After Effects. And if you've taken any of my courses, you'll see that I do most of my design in After Effects these days. But starting out, it was important that I knew Photoshop and Illustrator in addition to After Effects. And then as time moved on, I needed to know Cinema 4D, but I didn't have to know all about Cinema 4D. I didn't have to know, I got pretty good at animating uh, objects in Cinema 4D as well as cameras in Cinema 4D, but I suck at texturing. I suck at modeling. I don't even want to touch modeling. I'm okay at lighting. But if I'm hired for a project, I'm just straight up with, I'm very straight with the producers or the team. And I say, hey, I don't model it. You guys need to bring someone in to do that. You hand me a model with a texture on it, I can animate it for you. But I found that most of my work was then falling into After Effects. So it just depends what you want to do. If you're going to go into particle systems, you probably need to know Particular or Stardust, which are two big particle plugins inside of After Effects at the time of this recording. Or there's particle systems like X Particles and Cinema 4D. So it just depends where you want to go. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second key point that you need to focus on to become a successful freelancer is branding. Branding can be many things, but the most important things that you need to focus on inside of branding are two things, and that's your website and your reel. Now, I'll talk about the website first, okay? So for the website, you don't need to have a complicated website, right? You just need to have one or two pages, or maybe 3 pages, but nothing more than 3 pages. The 3 pages could be something like, page 1 is your home page, and you come to that home page and it's got your reel in there. And maybe page 2 is your about page. It's just a blurb about you. And maybe page 3 is your contact information, or maybe it's individual projects. If those individual projects are style frames or they're animated pieces, whatever it is. Maybe on the about page, you put a contact information. That's really important as well. You could go one page. I've done that in the past, and I've seen it work for other freelancers very, very well. And the one page just has your reel on it, about you, and contact. And that's it, right? So it's really important that you have a little blurb about you on that website, because when a producer is looking to hire a freelancer, if they've never worked with you before, they want to know just a little bit about you. And that's just one short paragraph, maybe 2 short paragraphs. And that's just the writing, the description about you is going to tell them a lot just in those words about who you are as a person in general, right? And I can say like, maybe you have like a small picture there with you as well on the about page. And that's going to tell them that, appearances say a lot. So if that photo's there, they're immediately going to get a read on who you are. But in your writing, they're going to get a sense of, kind of like your personality. Are you sarcastic? Are you funny? Are you very dry, straightforward? Are you delivering the facts? Are you putting some humor in there? It's going to tell them a little bit about you. Unfortunately, in our industry, there's some egos, right? And from my experience, even if a person is very, very talented, if the ego gets in the way, the producers aren't going to bring that person back. So the about you is just for a new company that's looking to hire you, just to so they get to know you a little bit. Of course, once a company hires you, if you impress them, they're going to keep coming back to you, and about you is not important anymore, right? But and then once your career kind of takes off, you'll find that you don't have to have new clients coming in. You just need a handful of good clients. 5 to 10 awesome clients will keep you busy all year round, right? It'll feed you, it'll feed your family, and that's all you need. It's just a handful of clients. So that's the about you. Now the next thing is the real. And before I talk about the real, the contact. For contact, you don't have to put your phone number. It's it's up to you. It's questionable if you want to do it or not. It's up to you. I never did. Actually, I did do it a couple times, but I found it wasn't necessary. You just need that email, but you need it front and center. You need to let them know easily how to contact you. Now, let's talk about the reel. The reel needs to be typically 60 seconds to 90 seconds. I don't advise anything over 90 seconds. We are overloaded with content these days, and people lose attention. Their attention to you is going to fade very quickly after 90 seconds. And in the past, I had a small boutique motion graphic studio, and I was a creative director there, and I was hit with reels all the time and emails with those reels, attached to those reels. And I found that after 90 seconds, I'm checked out. It's just too much. You can show a lot. You can show everything about your talent and who you are in 60, 90 seconds. Even 30 seconds works. So in that reel, you need to make it unique to you. And a lot of that depends on the music. And that also shows some of your personality with that music. You need to show your best work, period. If you're trying to fill up a reel to 60 seconds and you find that you've got 30 seconds of really awesome work in there, and then there's going to be 30 seconds of kind of like mediocre work, cut it out, make your reel 30 seconds. Okay. If you include the work in there that's your best work, it's got to be also work that you want more of, because what you're doing is you're putting your best work out there to a producer who's looking for that type of work, and that producer's going to hire you based on that work. So it's just a big cycle. So you are putting out to the world in your reel work that you want more of, and then that work is going to come to you. And for example, like, I don't enjoy doing character animation. Okay. And I have done some character animation in the past, multiple projects. And it's because the clients I had knew what I was capable of. So they would say, "Hey, we got a character piece. We know you don't like doing that, but can you help us out and do that?" Sure, I'll do it for you. But I'm never going to show that character animation on my reel because I don't want more of that work from new clients. I don't want to advertise to the world, "Hey, I can do character animation," and then I start getting more of that. I'm filled creatively filled with work like particle effects and polishes and lighting and really dark, moody work, and that's what really fills my soul. So that's what's going to be on my reel because I want more of it. For those of you who are creating a reel and you don't have enough work to really show off your talent, maybe you only have 10, 15 seconds of really awesome work, and the rest of your work is stuff that you don't want. Well, create spec work. I talk about this all the time, but my first several reels were mostly filled with spec work. Now, what is spec work? Spec work is not work that I'm getting from a client. I'm not a big believer at all in doing free work for clients, spec work for clients. I've done it a couple times in my life. I'm literally saying 2 or 3 times in 12, 13, 14 years of freelancing. It never amounted to anything. It was always the promise of, "Hey, if this turns out awesome, we're gonna come back to you with all this work. It's gonna be amazing, a lot of money." It never works out, right? I mean, same for my friends. They've done the same thing, and it's very rare for it to come back and be a big project that actually pays you. So I am not a believer in spec work. You have a unique talent as a motion designer, and you should be paid for that. Even if it's a lower budget project, you should be paid something for that. Okay. So, anyways, if you don't have the work to fill your reel, make spec work. Go home, create the work that you want more of. If you love doing textured work or 3D work or logo animations, just create it, right? Like just let's say like I take a logo like Coca-Cola or anything, any type of make up a logo and animate it and make it do what you think is just going to sell and it's just really awesome. And if creative directors and producers see that and they see that you have talent, you will get hired based on that. They're not going to come to you and say, "Hey, did you really do this animation right here for this company?" They just want to see what you've done and know that you did it, and then they're going to hire you based on that. Now, that brings up one caveat, one not caveat, tangent I just want to talk about very quickly, and that is don't ever show someone else's work on your reel that you didn't have a heavy hand in. Okay, this has happened to me in the past. It's happened to my friends in the past where let's say I worked on a 5-10 second piece, and I basically did 90% of the look, the design, the animation. And then another freelancer came in and he did some expressions on one animation piece. Well, he took that piece and he showed it off on his reel, which is a bunch of crap, right? Because he didn't do that piece. He just came up with an expression, a number to plug into my animation. So it wasn't his right to take that piece and show it off as his work. I called him out on it, told him, "Hey, you need to remove that from your reel." And he did it, right? Because a producer or a creative director wants to know that you did that piece. If you have some really strong pieces, but let's say you're a specialist and all you do is a certain piece of that image, then just call it out. You can put that in the description below your reel. You can break down your reel and say like, I do particle effects. Every particle effect we see in these shots is from me. Let producers know. Be upfront. Be straight with whoever it is trying to hire you, even if it's an end consumer. Be straight with them. They'll appreciate it in the end, and you're going to be in a better place with them as well. Okay. So one more key point we're going to talk about, key point number 3, and this is ideal clients. Okay. Once you've got, what type of freelancer you want to be, you've got some branding out there because your branding on the online is what is going to attract that work to you. You need to attract your ideal client. So you need to get super clear on who your ideal client is, right? You need to figure that out. So is your ideal client, is it a production studio? Is it a movie studio? Is it an end business? Is it an end consumer? Is it an agency? There's a lot of end clients, and you need to decide who it is that you want to work for. Now, maybe you don't know who it is that you want to work for, and that's okay too. It's okay to kind of dive in and explore that, but just be aware of who you think your ideal client should be. Now, for me, I found that I really enjoyed working with production houses, other teams of motion designers. So that means that production companies like Digital Kitchen or Prologue Films would hire me to come in and work on these pieces for like film titles or advertisements, and I would work for the most part with teams of other people. Maybe it's one other person, maybe it's 3 other guys, maybe it's a whole big team. But I found that I really enjoyed working with production studios and producers and creative directors. I gelled better with those types of people. There was times I worked for agencies. It wasn't for me. The whole agency mentality, I didn't gel with that. And that was okay, right? There's a lot of other motion designers who do really well with that. I also found that the times that I worked with like an end client as like a business, I did a lot of that. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't work. I found a lot of times there was maybe some higher budgets there, but it just wasn't worth it to me. I found that ultimately my sweet spot, like I said, was production studios, because they knew what my talents were. They respected my time. They respected my creativity. I got paid really well to work with them. And it was fun. I would learn a lot from other motion designers, even working remotely. Like we would pass project files back and forth, depending on the job. And I learned a lot that way. So Also, with an ideal client, you need to manage expectations. Okay. So once you get a client to come into you and use your services, you need to manage what their expectations are, which is also, I found that production studios, it was much easier to do that because they did understand that motion design takes a lot of time. Let's be honest. Like, there's certain consumers or businesses out there that think that motion design can be done really quick. Like, you click a button, boom, it's done. It's animated. Look at that. Wow. Well, that's not the case, right? So, managing expectations, if you're working with a business who doesn't understand, or even an advertising company who doesn't understand how long motion design takes, or they don't understand the process of what it takes, you need to manage their expectations. You need to be upfront and say, okay, this is how it works. This is how I work. And this is how long it's going to take. This is what it's going to cost. If managing expectations also has to do with like things like revisions, like you're going to get 2 rounds of revisions, maybe 3 rounds of revisions. After that, the fees got to go up. There's also different stages. There's a rough stage. You have to approve the rough draft of my design. You have to approve the rough draft of my animation. You have to approve the 85% finished piece. And then we go into polish, and it's a much easier process if you manage their expectations. And one other point about having an ideal client is you need to over deliver to your client. And if you respect your client, you over deliver to what their expectations are, they're going to respect you to the highest standing, and they're going to keep coming back for more, right? Over delivering doesn't mean that I'm working. I said I would give it 40 hours and I'm going to give it 60 hours and call it good. No, that's not over delivering. That's killing yourself, not getting paid for it. Over delivering maybe means that the deadline is 5 o'clock on Friday. I'm going to deliver it to you at 4 o'clock on Friday. So you're not freaking out. The producer's not freaking out. I'm going to deliver just right ahead of schedule. I'm going to maybe add in a few little minute details that I know they're going to be okay with, to just really take that piece to the next level, and come in on budget as well. Come in on time, on budget, and add a few little details if it's going to be okay to do that. You don't want to come into a piece at the very end and say, "Oh, by the way, I added this design element right here. What do you think? It's awesome. I know you guys are going to love it." And they're like, "What do you mean? You can't add that." So it just depends on how the client is, what the project is in terms of over delivering. But if you always deliver on time, on budget, that goes miles and miles with clients. So those are my 3 key points to focus on to become a successful freelancer. Like I said, I get asked all the time, what should I do to become successful? Just focus on the type of freelancer you want to be. That goes very deep into softwares and what it is that you actually want to do. Focus on your branding, and that's your online presence, and focus on getting your ideal client, and you will be good to go. So that's what I've got for you. If you want to dive even deeper into how to become a successful freelancer, I do have a course through motionscience.tv called the Freelance Effect. It goes into these 3 key points even deeper, and it goes into 3 or 4 more points in addition to these that go very deep. It's a course that is set up to set you up for success as a freelancer, because like I said, I've done this for many, many, many years. I've always charged a premium for my services. I've always gotten paid for those services, and I've got a lot of killer work to show based on those philosophies. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, I'm Cameron, and this is Motion Science.